Hello and welcome to this tutorial where I'm going to have a look at building a game where it's one versus many. And what that means is essentially there's two teams of people. On one team is one person on their own, and on the other team is everyone else that's in the game. So this has come about because on the Discord some people were talking about how do we do this? It's not built into any of the starter templates, and so I thought it might be a good opportunity to look at how some of the team balancing stuff works within the game controller. So in order to do this, I'm going to be doing some Lewis scripting, which means I'm going to need to use advanced mode in Crayta, and I started with a team elimination game template. So when we start a team elimination game, we may find that after the lobby, and I've reduced my lobby to 1 second, after the lobby, you kind of have maybe five to 6 seconds before the game actually ends if you're testing it on your own. And that's because an elimination game is won if there's one person left. And when you're testing a game on your own, there is only one person. So to solve this problem, in order for us to be able to test our game and work with this game template, we need to do a little bit of code tweaking. So firstly, I'm just going to increase my max play time to 2 minutes, just so that I've got plenty of time to test my game. And then I'm going to find my game controller. And so to do that, you might need to use this filter box to type in game. It's usually a child of the terrain if you haven't moved it around too much. I've put mine at the root of my game because I've got lots of different voxel meshes in here. So find your game controller, then scroll to the bottom of the entity editor to find the elimination game script. Click edit this asset. And then within here, what we need to do is essentially stop it from ending the game when it finds out that there's only one person left. And so in the check for elimination function here, this is essentially what it's doing, is counting how many people are left on each team. And if there's only one person or no one left alive, then it ends the game and it ends the elimination mechanic. So let's just comment those 2 lines of code out and then put ourselves in a little comment here that's a to-do. And there we need to uncomment this before we publish. That's just to remind ourselves that the game won't work without those 2 lines of code. Or it will work, you just end up with one person running around for a really long time. So we will need to put those back in before we publish our game. But now that that's done, I can leave the elimination game script alone. And I'm going to head over to the game script itself. So this is in the same entity, the game controller. In the entity editor, we can see this game script, and I can click edit this asset to start editing this script. This is a little bit different from the elimination game script. The game script itself is a lot more abstract. It's used in lots of different games. And what we're going to do is at the moment, the game script, when it detects that we're using teams, so you've got this has teams checkbox checked, essentially whenever a user logs in, it gives them a team. So we can find that if I search for user login. On user login is the name of the function or the event. This is called automatically by Crayta when a new user logs in. This function is called. It's called on any script within the game. So useful to leverage. However, here we're doing this set user team part if the game has teams. And this is calling this function down here. And we can see within here what it's doing is it counts up how many people are on each team. And then the team with the least amount of people, it will add the user to that team so that it always tries to keep it as fair as possible. So it'll be one team, then the other, one team, then the other sort of thing to build up essentially the same amount of people on each team. We don't want the same amount of people on each team. We want one person on one team and everyone else on the other team. So to start with, I'm going to put everyone on one team. I'm just in this local team part here, which is the bit where it determines which team to put this person on. I'm just going to put in the number 2, and then I'm going to put a comment there so the rest of this line of code is commented out. So this won't run by putting that comment there, and we're putting everyone on team 2. And that then gets sent to the user entity like that. So now that we've done that and everyone's on team 2, how do we make it so that we just have one person going on to team 1? And moreover, how do we make sure that that is repeatedly, it's not the same person every time? And how do we make it so that it's nice and fair, where every person gets to have a go at going on their own each round? So maybe if there's 5 people, you would want there to be 5 rounds with one person being solo on each round, and then start again, and then another 5 rounds, 5 people. So how do we make sure that happens? So there's a really cool algorithm called, I think the unofficial title is the Scrabble Bag Algorithm. It's also used in, I think the original Tetris used it to choose shapes to make sure that, essentially what it is what we'll do is we'll make a collection of all of our users, and then they'll be stored in a collection that's basically they haven't had a go at being on their own. And then when it's time to start a round, we'll pick one of the users from that collection and we'll put them on their own, and then we'll play the round. And then they won't be on the hasn't played on their own collection anymore. So the next time we'll essentially pick a different user, and then the next time a different user, until we run out of users who haven't been on their own. And then we just put all of the users back into the collection and we start again. And it can just be randomly selecting, or it could pick the first one or whatever. I think we're going to do randomly selecting for this. So that's the sort of the logic of what's going to happen. So how do we code that? How do we put it into our game? So firstly, we need this collection of users that haven't yet played on their own. So let's create a class level variable to store that, because we need that to be persistent. So up here in the init function, which is called on the server, I'm going to go in here in the init, and where it says if self.properties.has teams, that looks useful because I know this can only happen on something that has teams. I'm going to go down here and I'm just going to put a new line of code underneath self.teamColors. I'm going to do self.not being solo is the name of my class level variable, equals, I'm going to do open parentheses, close parentheses. So this is essentially, in Lua, this is setting up what's called a table. And we can use a table to store a collection of things and then index them with numbers and stuff. So yeah, we've got a collection called not being solo. So going back down to our on user login. So whenever a user logs in, that's fine. What we're going to need to do is have a function which runs at the beginning of each round. So where we have our teams, set user teams, cool. Yeah, underneath there, we can try and keep all the team stuff together in this script. So underneath set user team, we're going to go function, game script, rebalance teams. And this is a function that we're going to call at the beginning of each round. So save the game script. If I scroll down in the entity editor over here on the on round start, I'm going to click the plus. I'm going to drag the game controller into the entity like that. Click on the game script as the script required. And then in the event, I'm going to choose the rebalance teams function that I've just written. So at the beginning of each round, this function will be called. So when this function is called, we need to select someone from our collection of people that haven't yet been on their own. However, that collection of people that haven't yet been on their own has no one in it because we've just made an empty array or an empty table. So let's add some people if we don't have any, because there's 2 times where we might not have anyone in that collection. The first is at the very beginning when you don't have anyone in it. In that not being on their own thing. And then the second time that could happen is we've been through everyone and there is no one left that hasn't been on their own. So let's put it in the rebalance team function is what I'm trying to say. So if we need to test, we need to say if self hash self dot not being solo. So that's the length of, if the length of this array or if the length of this table is equal to 0, then So if there's no one in there, we need to add some people to that. And the best way to do that is to go self dot not being solo equals get world get users. And that gets us a table of all of the users in the world. So essentially just fills up not being solo table with all of the users. So that's that bit. This will happen at the beginning of each round. So we need to now select someone from this collection and then remove them from that collection. So firstly, let's select someone from this collection. So the way we do that is we create an index, a number which will refer to someone within that collection. So local solo index equals self dot not being solo. Okay, so we need that. We need math.random, which is a Lua function, which will find us a random number between 1 and whatever we put between the brackets. So math.random, so we need a number between 1 and however many people are in the thing. So if there's 5 people in our not being solo collection, we need a random number between 1 and 5. So I can just use the length of that there. So that will then store a number between 1 and however many people there are into this solo index. So now we need to get hold of the person at that index. So we're going to do local solo user equals self dot not being solo open square brackets solo index. So get the user at that index. Cool. Then we just need to loop through everyone in the game and tell them what team they're in. So we can sort of do that in a similar way to the for each user loop up here. So we're going to do get world colon for each user. And then it's expecting us to have a function, which will be the callback. So for each user, run this function where user entity is passed to us in this argument here. So for each user, user entity send to scripts. So we're just doing the same thing we did here, where we set team, and now we need to send a team number, and this will rely on whether we are this is the solo user or not. So let's check whether this is the solo user or not, and then we'll decide which team number to send them. So if user entity is equal to solo user, then, so if this is the solo user, then put them on team 1. Otherwise, else, user entity send to scripts set team 2, put them on team 2. We need to make sure we put this true in as well, because that will determine whether they can talk to each other. And it will stop the person on team 1 from being able to hear everyone on team 2. Okay, and then just going to end that if statement. And then the last thing we need to do before we finish this function is remove that person from the not being solo table. So self dot not being solo. No, it's table dot remove, which is the Lua for take this person out. So then we give it the table self dot not being solo, the name of the table, and comma the index of the thing we want to remove, which is solo index. Okay, so remove the person that we've just put on team 1 from this not being solo table. And so each round, the number of people on the not being solo collection will reduce. And then when there's no one left, it'll run this part because of this if statement, and it will refill that collection and start again. Yeah, okay, so that's the logic. Now, testing it is difficult when there's only one person. So what I tend to do is I would use, for this, I've asked on the Discord, and I've asked some people to come in and help me out. So big thanks to Shrathina, who came on and pitched in and tested this code with me. So thank you for that. If you are on your own and you can't gather someone to test it with you, you can use print statements to help you to determine whether something is happening, although it won't be as good as seeing it actually happen when you test run the game. So this is an alternative essentially, but not quite as good. So print number not being solo, self dot not being solo. So essentially print the length of the not being solo array to start with. Once we have that, so we're expecting that to be 0 at the beginning. Once we've been through everyone, as there's only one person, I'm expecting that to be me, just one in there. So this should print number not being solo 0. This should print number not being solo 1. Then I'm going to print out the index. So I'm going to see whether it's come up with a random number within the range that we wanted it to. Then I'm going to print whether it's managed to find a person. So this will print nil or error if it didn't find someone. And then let's print the amount of people left once we have finished the function. Number of people left in the not being solo collection. So quite a few print statements just to check through and to see kind of what's going on in that function as it runs. And we'll open the console. So there's a 1 second lobby. So I've automatically been selected as the solo player, which is great because we can see here it says number not being solo 0. So that was at the beginning. And then once we'd looped through the array of all of the through all of the users, we can see that we found one person, and the length of people, the number of people who haven't yet played as the solo team is 1, which is me. Then we've managed to randomly select the number 1 between the range 1 and 1. So that kind of works. And then it's got user data, which is cool because that's what we would want it to come back with and not like an error or nil. And it says setting voice channel to 1. Great. So it's setting up my team correctly. And then we can see that the array or the collection, the table, has been completely emptied because there was only one person in it. They're now the solo party, and then the array is empty. So that's essentially the team balancing stuff for a one versus all game. So ways to extend this might be to look at what player templates or user templates or loadouts or anything like that you might want to change depending on what team they're in. So don't forget you're using this set team function on the user, which means that you can go and capture it in the user somewhere. If you wanted to change the loadout, you could do so in the inventory. If you wanted to give them some special character or position them somewhere else in the game or do different things, then you can totally just grab hold of that set team event. And then any of the, if we have a look at this, is it this one? No. If we have a look at the team script, any of the functions, any of the code attached to the user, wherever it has the set team function, that will run at the beginning of each round when we are setting up the team. So that gives you an opportunity to configure the one and give them all of the advantages in the world. Bigger gun, more health, all of that stuff. Maybe they're an air conditioning unit. I don't know. It's your game. Yeah. So that's the one versus all team balancing stuff. I hope that it's made sense. If you get stuck, please head over to the Discord, head over to the Lua help channel or the Ask Anything channel and just ask away. There's plenty of people around to help you with your Lua scripting. And I really look forward to your one versus all games in Crayta.